Welcome back to the Talk 20s podcast. Today, I'm joined in the studio by Chloe Taylor. She is amazing on TikTok. If you've ever seen any of her dating advice on there. Before we get started, I am going to give you just a little bit of a warning that we are going to be talking about some sensitive topics to do with relationships, including domestic violence and abuse. So if this is not helpful for you to listen to right now, then please just come back and listen to another episode or listen later down the line. But before we dive in, I've got to say, Chloe is so fun. She talks about things so openly, and I absolutely loved having this conversation with her. If any of you are watching or listening to this on Spotify and you're wondering why we don't put the video on there anymore, we are actually moving all of our video content across to YouTube. So if you want to watch us in the studio, you need to head on over to YouTube to watch that. On Spotify, you'll still always be able to listen in audio only. Enjoy the show. In order to keep bringing you guys tons of free content, we work with brand partners who you'll hear from in this episode, including an advertisement from Zopa Bank. This is the first time you're tuning into the Talk 20s podcast. Allow us to introduce you to our headline sponsors, Zopa Bank, home of the Smart Saver account. If you're a long-term fan of the podcast, you'll already know about Zopa's Smart Saver, which lets you save into personalized pots and boost your savings in exchange for a notice period to access your funds. The longest notice period is 95 days and offers the highest interest rates. To find out more about Zopa's Smart Saver, download the Zopa app. We need to tell you that you need to save a minimum of £1 and the interest is paid monthly and is subject to variation. On with the show. We also have the gorgeous Mochi here. Explain who Mochi is for those who are just listening to the podcast, not watching on YouTube.
Mochi is my little miniature dachshund.
He's so cute, guys. This is my first ever furry guest on the podcast. Mochi, can you speak into the microphone? He's trying. His mouth is right next to you. He's like, not sure. Well, we always kickstart our podcast by getting our guests to look at their camera roll from this time last year and to show us a photo that nobody's ever seen before. And I know what you're going to show me, and I think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
So we might have to blur a little bit of the picture out as well.
Yeah. I'm going to have to put my thumb over my vagina in this. That sounds hilarious.
That does sound funny.
This is a photo of me as a baby when I was born.
Yeah.
Because May's my birthday month.
Mine too.
And so actually, when I was born, I came out like one of the Cramp twins, quite literally. I was purple. I'd been strangled by the umbilical cord, and this left knee didn't even bend this way. It was bent backwards over my right shoulder. So really, I
like
should
you
be
doing like some kind of weird aerobics.
Yeah, I should be. Is it a ventriloquist? No, it's not. Is it a ventriloquist?
No,
that's not.
Contortionist.
That's the one.
Yeah.
That's what I should have been realistically in this lifetime.
But how is your knee looking like a normal knee now?
Shout out to Birmingham Children's Hospital. I was there constantly till I was like 7.
Wow.
Having fluid drained out of my knee. And they were so good to me because it at one time took 6 doctors to hold me down just to have the little needle in your hand to put you to sleep.
Chloe, you have lived 1,000 lives. Yeah. Every time we start a conversation, Chloe's like, yeah, I've got a story for this. And the stories are wild. Like, you should have a film about you and just your life. Or not even a film. You'd need like 10 different series.
Like a 20-part series.
For just because each time I'm like, where is the story coming from? Like, have you always been someone who's just lived a pretty crazy life? Like, did you feel like you attract these kind of things, or like, I don't know?
Yeah, I think so. I still don't know why. Yeah. But yeah, I feel like drama always seems to find me some way or another.
But weirdly, it doesn't seem to faze you. Like, you're sat there, and me and Georgia are listening going, if that happened to me, I would not be sane. I would not be able to cope. But you're just like, yeah, that's one story.
Do you know what? I think because I've seen like the worst of situations, nothing surprises me anymore. Mm-hmm. So I'm just like, oh, another great story time to tell the kids one day.
You're massive on TikTok. What got you into TikTok then? Because you've been doing it for ages and you have a massive following over on that.
I did do dating content predominantly.
Yeah.
Not so much anymore. But the reason I actually got into doing dating content specifically is because of all the not so great past relationships I've had and the things that I've learned from that. I kind of just wanted my page to be like a comfort page for people to come to. And it's almost like the advice I give is stuff I wish people told me when I was younger as well. So I'm kind of like acting like a big sister almost, because I am one in real life. I've got a younger brother and sister that are both teenagers. So yeah, that's why I kind of started the page. But it was very accidental. Like massively accidental. I think I sat at like 40k on TikTok for 2 years and then decided to just put everything into that one thing. And then it blew up to like 2.8 mil in a year and a half.
What kind of stuff have you been talking about when you used to do your dating content?
It started out being like dating advice to my younger self. And it was like things girls wish guys knew. And then I did kind of the opposite, and it was like things guys wish girls knew, because I grew up having male friends. So I was like, well, I know both sides of the kind of story. And then I just got a little bit too confident, I think, because I started doing like things girls do but will never admit to, and got very real and raw on there, like talking about the fact that girls literally don't throw away underwear that will have acidic stains in them. Like that type of stuff on the internet is crazy for me to be putting out, but I did, and it worked. Yeah. And everyone was like, oh my God, I can't believe you've just said this, you've outed us. But at the same time, I think they probably found comfort in the fact that someone else has said it and don't feel alone.
For sure, yeah. That's hilarious. But I feel like you do everything, although you've had some crazy stuff, and there is some more difficult stories that like you've told us, and some of it you shared online, some of it you haven't shared online.
Yeah.
But like you always do it with like I just say, like you've just got this amazing attitude about life that you like, it doesn't seem to like, the good stuff is funny and hilarious to watch, but also you're also really good at talking about the harder stuff to talk about as well. So thanks. I love that. What, like, was there something that kind of triggered like the launch of like wanting to talk about relationships? Like what was like the initial thing that kind of made you think, I really need to talk about this online?
Yeah, I haven't ever spoken about this publicly, but I had a really toxic relationship when I was like 20. I was in like my last year at uni, and I had a really, really toxic relationship. Long story short, the guy that I was dating, I initially started speaking to him because somebody else tried to catfish me, pretending to be him.
What are the chances of that?
I'm not going to get into it, but he was like the stereotypical tall, tanned, dark, handsome, had tattoos. And I think like a lot of the girls on my fashion course at uni at the time were like proper nosy into things and stuff. Because I made that relationship somewhat public. Like I posted about him and stuff. And the relationship itself, like he moved to the UK because he was originally from Belfast. And I thought he was moving in with me to kind of make the relationship work, so it wasn't long distance. And it actually turned out that he was running from Belfast because of tax evasion.
Oh my God.
But he only lived with me for a little bit. And he would isolate me from my friends, my family. If we had an argument, I was never allowed to speak to anybody else about it because I'd get a different opinion. So before anything happened, and I will get to that, it was already just a very toxic, gaslighty relationship. And then one of the days at university, I get a message from one of the girls on my course basically saying like, Chloe, do you do OnlyFans with your boyfriend? Because like all the girls at school are like, or at uni are talking about it, kind of thing. And I'm not going to bitch behind your back anymore. And it made so much sense to me because I'd been going into university and felt like everyone's eyes were on me, and I felt like I was being paranoid. So when she said that, it was almost like a sense of relief because I was like, oh, at least now I know what everyone's talking about. So then I get sent basically a screenshot of a Twitter profile that was photos of me that I had sent to my boyfriend like in confidence that it wasn't going anywhere else. And it was under a different alias. So it had a completely different name, and it was promoting his OnlyFans, which I wasn't a part of. And I knew he had that at the time. But so for context, he was a bodybuilder, and he competed in like, I think it's called PCAs maybe, like the big bodybuilding competitions. And so he had told me beforehand that he had an OnlyFans, and that all that he really posted on there was like flexing videos of like what they would have to do on stage anyway. And I was like, listen, I'm not one to judge, but like if that's what you want to do, fine, just leave me out of it, kind of thing. And he assured me that it was literally just older men, gay guys that were interested in this or whatever. Wasn't anything crazy. It just kind of was like income in between him getting an actual job in the UK. And I was like, fine, just leave me out of it. So then obviously coming to find out that there's been photos I've sent to him in confidence that are promoting his OnlyFans, which I then found out wasn't that, was horrible. And it was like a defamation of character. Now, I don't have Twitter, never had Twitter. And so finding that out was horrendous, especially when my stepdad at the time worked for Twitter, because the last thing you want is your stepdad coming across images of you in that kind of a nature. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that was wild. And that wasn't even the kicker for me, because I also then found out one of the days I had a group project at uni, and he had access to like all of my devices basically. And that sounds really weird saying out loud now, but I was like, I've got nothing to hide, so you can have the passwords to everything, like I don't mind. And he had the password to my laptop, and I had like Adobe Premiere Pro on there, because this was like when I wanted to do social media, and I was like editing YouTube videos back in the day. And I had gone to open my laptop one of the days for a group project to open up a presentation I'd done. And on there was a file on my desktop that I didn't recognize. And I was like, what the hell is this? Just like curiosity killed the cat kind of thing. And I'm in the middle of a group presentation, and I open it, and it's a video of him and a male sports masseuse, and basically him having like a happy ending. And I was like, sorry, what have I just witnessed in front of everybody else? This is laughable. And it was in a library to make it worse. So like the whole library has heard my boyfriend moan from another man doing things to him that he shouldn't have been doing.
Oh my God.
And so I was mortified.
Yeah.
Absolutely mortified. Obviously we broke up.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I then also found out that after he'd done that, he had in fact given me chlamydia, which is fantastic. But you know what's mad? I actually didn't realize that it was from him. Like I didn't put two and two together. I was like, oh my God, have I had this the whole time we've been dating, and like I've not realized? Like, is this going to mean I'm infertile now? I can't have kids in the future, blah, blah, blah. At no point did I think it was because he'd cheated on me. And then when I found that video, it all made sense. I was like, brilliant. Thanks so much for that.
Well, when we were chatting before, you also said there was some like weird things that went on, like in terms of like how he was able to get images from you. Like, of course, like if you're in a relationship and you feel like safe and stuff, you might send pictures across, but like he probed you for like more pictures.
Yeah,
in a way,
he
like...
did it in an emotional way. It was so, as a girlfriend in this position, it was the most awkward position I've ever been put in my life. One of the days he came home from work, so I'd got him a job basically at the gym, in like the local gym that I'd been to for like 3 years while I'd been at uni. Got him a job there as a PT. And one of the days he gets home from work, this is when he was living with me, and he was bawling his eyes out to me, crying to me. I'm like, what's wrong? Talk to me. Was being really caring and there for him. And he told me this story about how he had gone into the girls' toilets and changing rooms and followed a girl because he had, sorry, that's my phone, because he had sexual urges. For one, being a girlfriend and hearing that your boyfriend's having sexual urges towards other women, crazy. But the fact you followed her into a girl's changing rooms to do that. And he broke down to me and was crying his eyes out because he was scared of what he might do in the future. Hence why I sent those photos then, to be like, listen, if you ever get put in this situation ever again, at least you've got something then to kind of sort yourself out.
It's mental that this isn't like a made up story.
No.
Like, it's actually crazy.
I will say, like, he was taking steroids at the time and he was on like Tren, which from what he told me makes your sex drive incredibly high and makes you very aggressive, which had a big part to play in it. But even still, like, that was crazy for me. And in hindsight, I should have broken up with them then, obviously, before any of the rest of it happened. But at that point in time, I was like, I'm trying to be as supportive as I can and try to see it from his point of view and be like, listen, like, I'm here for you. We'll get through it together, kind of thing. Horror.
But this is like the wildest things. Like, I'm certain that like we had this conversation over lunch, well, coffee beforehand, and we said that like although that your stories that you've got and you've told us are like very extreme, I'm certain, and Georgia and I can relate, that there have been times in many women's lives where similar situations have happened. And like, I know a lot of people go, not all men, and you know, not all guys are like that. We will caveat with that. But like, it's weird how many people have had an experience like that can relate to a small part of that, whether it's just like a little manipulation to do, or do this or do that. Like, it's actually scary that we feel like, you know, put in those positions a lot of the time.
Yeah, I was saying to you earlier, wasn't I? Like, it is rare for me to speak to a woman and for them to be like, oh, I've never had anything like that happen to me. I think quite literally all the women that I know have had either something like that happen, or it be SA, or worse, unfortunately. It's just, not great. Not great is not even the word to say. It's horrific that we have to just go through that and just be expected to act normal.
And also, I think one of the other discussions we were having is that, like, especially when this happens to us, like, early on in our life, it shapes how we then grow up. Like, this is obviously a podcast called Talk 20s. We talk a lot about being in your 20s. And these are the things that can happen in our teens or early 20s, or maybe even later, that then have an impact on how we see relationships going forwards.
Massively.
Because, like, there is a happy ending to this story, because, like, your boyfriend where you're with now, super happy. I mean, I won't speak for you, but, like, I know that you're so much happier as a result of the back of that. But, like, at the same time, what you've been through to get to this point, and having to like unlearn a lot of like toxic things,
it's so hard.
Is mad. Yeah,
so hard. I think I filmed a TikTok on this like the other day. I know it's one of the hardest things you can do, to have the balls to leave a toxic relationship, but no one prepares you for how hard it is to get into a healthy relationship after all you know is toxicity. I found that to be so hard. And it's like, you've got this person that treats you so well, is so understanding, is so supportive about everything, but like, it really shows the ugly sides to you. And it's like, you've got to be prepared to almost confront those things. And like, I've had a therapist and I've got through all of the stuff that's happened to me. Bless her heart, the amount of stories she's heard.
She must be a very high-paid therapist. Genuinely, from all the stories you just told me in Georgia, we're like, whoa, like, how do you even process that? And you are like, so like, you clearly have processed a lot of it. Yeah, already,
for sure. Like, I can talk about it all, not get upset in the slightest. I can laugh about it all now. And
Which is mad that we're laughing at that. But
I know.
I
know. And I've forgiven the situations. And I think that's what you have to do. You really have to forgive what happened and kind of look at them as an event that happened, rather than attach it to you and your self-worth and your self-value. But yeah, my God, it's really difficult, I think, to just have to look at certain situations. Like, for example, like the other day, I think my boyfriend was on his phone and I was like, oh, like, what have you been up to? You know, when you're both like sat together in each other's presence and you're both doing something. I was like, oh, what were you doing? And he just was like, oh, nothing. Like, it's just nothing. And immediately I was like, why are you hiding something from me? Like, why won't you just tell me? And he was like, oh, because it's just nothing important. And I was like, even if it's nothing important, just tell me what you were doing. Like, it's nothing crazy. And then we ended up getting into like a bit of a discussion about it. And I was like, you're joking about this right now, but it's actually really triggering me. And he couldn't understand why. And I think, for anyone that has gone through a really toxic relationship and is coming into a healthy one, the best thing you can possibly do is communicate with your partner about past experiences and why you're going to react differently to a situation that to them is just like nothing. Do you know what I mean? Because he was like, you've just really overreacted at me there for like no reason. I don't understand why. And I was like, yeah, but you've got to understand, I've come from this, and this that's happened to me. I'm going to hyper-focus on the tiniest little details, the tiniest tone of voice. And people have done this to me before, and this has happened. And by no means is that me saying, you're going to do the same thing to me. But subconsciously, it's almost like your brain can't forget similar experiences. And so it sees the pattern, and you're like, fuck, it's happening again. And you just jump to conclusions. So it's really hard, but you kind of just have to stop yourself and kind of just reassure yourself. It's not.
I think it's very good advice. I've never really heard anyone talk about it before. But I've been through it myself. Like, so previous relationship, I've been with Dan for a really long time. So I've been with Dan for 10 years. But the relationships I had before that, like, and the long one I had before that got cheated on. Like, you know, loads of people get cheated on, but it had a huge impact on me. So then, of course, going into this 10-year relationship, I remember the first, like, honestly, it's taken a really long time to even, like, heal from that. But not necessarily because I got cheated on, but more because I'm more conscious, like you say, looking for all of those, like, red flags in that relationship. So you're going, oh God, what is this? And can I really trust someone? I thought I could trust this person and I couldn't, and my trust has been broken, and all of that kind of stuff. And it takes a while to go, no, okay, like, they're actually not going to do that to me, or they're not going to do this. And it just, it takes a strong person to actually be the other person in that healthy relationship who is coming into it like that is, you know, so much love. And I couldn't wish for a better relationship now, but like, I know I put him through a lot in those early couple of years because I was like so paranoid about everything. And it's the paranoia, and it's like, that's quite hard to handle, I think.
Yeah, I would not like to be in my boyfriend's shoes.
No.
Don't get me wrong though, bless him. He's always like so supportive, so appreciative of me, like tells me all the time like how great I am, which is nice. But I know that even already he's been put through like a few situations where it's been difficult to handle. But I think those are important conversations to have anyway, because it really helps you properly get to know somebody.
Agree, yeah.
And understand them. And I think in the end, that just makes your relationship even stronger.
Yeah. I think it's also how you communicate about it as well. If you go, like, when you do this, it makes it, like, if you talk all about them, I think if you tend to use like, I feel this way when this and this and this happens, if it's all about how you feel rather than like blame, because I think when you have those, sometimes it can get quite heated, doesn't it? If you go, when you do this, you make me feel this, this and this. And I've always found like to diffuse the situation in those situations, it's better to be like, I feel like this when this and this happens. Like that's that for me, that's been a game changer, because otherwise you feel like you're putting blame onto someone else for something that they've not really necessarily done.
And then it makes you feel crap afterwards as well, because you're like, I just feel like I'm like sabotaging the relationship. And then I don't know about you, but because of my past like experiences in relationships, I've had my fair share of abandonment issues and I've got anxiety. So I'm a massive overthinker. So I'll always jump to worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And then after I'll reflect on it and I'll be like, oh, I've done it again.
Yeah.
And I get so tired and frustrated at myself. And then I'm like, listen, I am so sorry about how I reacted to this. I know it's got nothing to do with you whatsoever. But yeah, bless him, he just has to take the brunt of it to begin with. And then I think after you explain properly, they can understand. And they're much more like, okay, this makes sense. But for someone that's secure and has a secure attachment style, it must just be like so difficult to even comprehend at first why that would even happen. So yeah, I think just my advice to anyone is just let them understand why.
You've had some other crazy things that have happened to you in your life. I don't know if we've even got time for many more of your stories, because they are literally...
It would be a 4-hour episode.
It would literally be a 4-hour episode. But are there any other moments that have kind of you've gone through in your life that you think, whoa, that's taught me a lot about life? Yeah.
I'm no stranger to being catfished, I'll be honest. And I feel like people look at you like you're an idiot when you say that, because even me, I've watched MTV's Catfished and I'm like, are you for real? Like, there are so many red flags there. How would you not see that someone's catfishing you? What do you mean you've spoken to them for like a year and you've not met up with them? That's like first sign, right? But yeah, so obviously I just mentioned that my really toxic ex when I was 20, I first met him because somebody catfished me pretending to be him. But
why? Just honestly, why? But I'm going to say why a lot of times in this episode, everyone, because I'm just saying what our audience is thinking. Why? But okay.
But yeah, I'm not going to go into the depths of it because we'd be here all day. Yeah. But I was catfished, I think it was about a year and a half ago, by what I found out to be a white woman who was a lesbian that was posing as a black athlete trying to talk to me. And that in itself is so wrong. But on top of that, then it gets into a whole other ball game when you've got a white woman trying to get you to say the N-word, preaching BLM, having the BLM fist as like a background on WhatsApp, telling you how to prepare to be the girlfriend of a black man and the racial abuse that you'll see from that yourself as well. I just don't know how anyone would ever be able to live with themselves doing that, knowing full well that they have no right to even be having those conversations. But yeah, it was crazy. And it was from a woman that works for a very, very, very reputable sports brand that, in my opinion, shouldn't have a job today, but still does. So, yeah.
It's mad because you think that these people are like, I don't know, like you look at Baby Reindeer and you think that, oh, they did, but this is genuine. Like, this is like, no, has a normal job. You would never, like, you would look at this woman and probably look up to her and be like, oh, amazing, what a fantastic role model. But behind the scenes is doing all this weird stuff. Like, there are such weird things going on in the world, like that being one of them.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people have skeletons in the closet that they don't ever tell anybody about. And it's so crazy that you could really think you know someone and have absolutely no idea about them whatsoever. Like, sometimes I think about, I wonder what her colleagues think of her at work and what their opinion of her is, yet they don't know all of this that she's done in the meantime. The fact that she's got 20 different accounts of the guy she's pretending to be and all of his teammates as well. Like, it was a whole operation, and that's what baffles me. How do you have the time?
Yeah.
When you've got such a big role for such a big company.
You're a busy woman. Like, how have you got time to do this?
Are you doing this on your lunch break?
Yeah.
Like, what?
Wow.
Crazy.
Wow. And like, yeah, I mean, we've told a few between ourselves of other stories that we've heard of, like stalking, things like that. This is obviously a difficult episode for people to probably listen to, because like it is one of those things that like it's the skeletons in the closet kind of thing. Oh, Mochi, that was a cute little yawn. But it's like all the skeletons in the closet, the things that we don't feel sometimes comfortable to talk about or hear about. But then when we go through it ourselves, that's why we keep it all in, and why we don't often ask for help earlier on, because we're like, oh, it's fine, it's this and this and this, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I should have seen the red flags.
Also, it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
I think a big thing for me in terms of not talking about certain things is a pride aspect.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I don't want people to think I'm stupid. And like this whole catfishing experience as well, like it went on for about 3 months, and don't look at me like I'm stupid, okay? There was evidence behind it as to why I thought it was real.
You've shown us some of the messages, and there's no, like, it looks completely legit. Like,
yeah, there was emails being sent from said company.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, very incriminating stuff.
Obviously, you do a lot of videos about this on your social media right now, but like, tell us about what you think are the biggest red flags to look out for when you're looking at a relationship, because you've had so many experiences now that you can kind of draw this information from.
This is a really difficult one, but I think if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Like, if it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's probably a fucking duck. Do you know what I mean? I think a lot of the types of people who are manipulative, like have got that kind of thing to them, will oftentimes have the best personality and can be so nice to everybody on the outside. And at the very beginning, more time will love bomb you, tell you everything that you want to hear, sell you a dream, and you're like, oh my God, this person's amazing. And they're so good with my friends, and they're so good here. And then slowly but surely that starts to fade away, and they pull you away from everybody. I think, and that's why I said it's a difficult one, because obviously I'm in a healthy relationship now, and he's incredible too. And at first, at the same time, I was like, this seems too good to be true. Like, there's nothing bad about this guy. But I think that comes with time. But I think if you notice like them slowly starting to isolate you from the people that you care about as well, I think that's a massive, massive sign. And even like little comments here and there that are like slightly controlling, that you might not like necessarily pick up on in the beginning, but it's little things like, don't like how you look when you wear makeup, or you look so much better when you're not wearing makeup. Then you're just like, what do you mean? You're supposed to like how I look both ways. Do you know what I mean? Little tiny things like that are indirect digs. I think those are the things that you should probably look out for as warning signs for worse to come down the line.
And I know it goes without saying that, like, obviously we should be looking for the red flags, but also there shouldn't be any red flags. Like, we should be raising our, like, men and young boys and stuff like that, and whoever in the world, like, everyone should be raised to not do these things.
I think respect is so rare nowadays. And I think that's what it all comes down to. It's so crazy for me because obviously with the content that I do, I see it from both sides of the story, I guess. But with a lot of guys, in terms of what they look for in a girl, is loyalty, respect, and honesty. That's literally it. And it vice versa for girls. But for some reason in this generation, it is so fucking hard to find that in someone. And I think there's probably a lot of conversations about this, but social media has got a lot to play in that. And I think a lot of people thinking the grass is greener and there's so many other options out there kind of thing, which is why I think you find relationships don't last as long as they did however many years ago. But yeah.
I hear it a lot from all of my friends. Like, obviously I met Dan before, like, this sounds so long ago, but I met Dan before dating apps, because it was 10 years ago now. And, you know, most of my friends are single. And so they're always saying, like, you know, people on dating apps, like, you can't trust people. Everyone thinks the grass is greener. You date for a lot of people just date for ages, and then it just, like, it never goes anywhere, or they get ghosted. And it's just like, I want to kind of fast forward like 30 years and see where relationships are then.
Yeah.
Like, because I think, he really wants to have his, you agree? Yeah. If you've heard Mochi throughout that conversation, he has had his two P's. Yeah, literally in that. But yeah, like, I do just wonder, like, how relationships are going to go, and, like, do you need to, like, how are we going to be able to meet more people in person, or will the apps change, or are we just going to be a generation that grows up with not great relationships? Like,
do you know what I think is crazy? I think a good kind of comparison is like, you know, when you go to a restaurant, massive menu, and you're like, God, I'm so overwhelmed by all the options here. I don't know what I want. I think it's the same when it comes to dating apps and relationships in that way, because it's like, if you had a smaller pool of like 5 options as opposed to 500 options, it's going to be so much easier for you to do that. And people wonder why they get ghosted. It's because they've got 500 different matches on their apps. Do you know what I mean? You can't possibly manage conversations with that many people. You're spending all day on it. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's often why relationships that do seem to be working in this kind of generation seem to be ones that have, like, met and they're in, like, a small circle of friends, or they're in, like, a really small town and stuff. And I guess kind of somewhat detached from having loads of options, if you know what I mean? Like, that's where I see, like, people who they've obviously met quite young, or they're in, like, some kind of group that I guess they just kind of shut off the other options and go, no, I'm putting my all in on this one, rather than going, oh, I could maybe go here, or I could maybe start dating again and stuff. Like, but then also, I guess the rest of the world is also saying, don't settle at the same time. So it's like you're hearing one bit of advice and then you're hearing another bit of advice as well. It's like really hard.
Yeah. I think the grass is greener is a really interesting conversation anyway, because you can be in a relationship with someone that gives you 80%. And as a woman, you're like, but I keep seeing all these videos online of, like, if he wanted to, he would, blah, blah, blah. And, like, am I settling for someone that's not going to do these things? Like, I don't know, the whole hotel treatment with balloons everywhere or something, and them getting me gifts, or, like, doing thoughtful things here and there. And then you can go and leave said relationship and look for somebody that will do those, but then they don't have the other 80% that the other person does. Do you know what I mean? Or, like, it's just for show and it's not authentic. So I think a lot of people have a hard time just being grateful for what they actually have.
I totally agree. Yeah.
And they're always just looking for the next best thing. And I think that's why people don't settle. And people are like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready for marriage or to be with this person for the rest of my life, kind of thing, because of that.
One of the people have written in and said, what things do people do when they don't actually want to date you? What advice would you give on that? Things people do when they don't actually want to date you.
I did a video on this recently. I think when it comes to girls, there's one line that I feel like we're all guilty of saying, but it's like, oh, you know, I'm just not looking for a relationship right now. And it's really harsh to say, but you don't want to be like, I'm just not interested in a future with you. But you just say it to be like, almost like, oh, it's just not on my plate right now.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not on my agenda. I'm just too busy with other stuff going on. I think that's a big
I think guys do say that
fallback.
too.
Yeah, I've just got a lot going on right now. I
Yeah.
just need to really sort myself out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one. I think. And also, I think one thing that guys should look out for in girls anyway is, like, if you're messaging somebody and it feels like you're always the one that's asking the questions and then never starting a conversation or, like, asking you a question, it's not like a tennis match back and forth. That shows you that they're not interested. They'll reply to you, but that's it. They don't ask a secondary follow-up
Giving you
question.
crumbs, basically.
Yeah. They're kind of just keeping you there as an option kind of thing to fall back on.
Yeah, I know that is the case for a lot of dating nowadays. It is like keeping my options open so I could go, I could go back to that if I find something else that's like better. But like in a lot of those situations, one person is clearly always more attached than the other in that situation.
But it could also be a situation, right, where you're talking to somebody all hours of the day, you get on so well, but if you're not ever actually making arrangements to go and meet up with them, they're not interested. They're not that interested.
Yeah.
You're just entertainment to them in the nicest way possible.
I've got a friend who's going through that literally right now. And we were talking about it last night, but it's very true.
Yeah.
Just like chatting back and forth, but never actually saying that.
When I actually think about, like, all of my healthy relationships I say that like I've had thousands. I haven't. I've had like 2.
Yeah.
But in each instance, very quickly have we met up after the first initial conversation. I think like within a matter of days or a week, we've actually gone and done something together.
Yeah.
I think that's a key sign.
And their intentions are clear, like from the get-go.
You'll know.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing, like, it's so cliche that everyone says, but it's like, when you know, but you actually do.
Yeah.
Like, it'll be so clear. You won't be confused. If you're confused, they're playing games with you. Do you know what I mean? You shouldn't ever feel like you don't know where you stand with somebody or feel scared to ask them, like, what are we, kind of thing. And if you do, then they're not the right person for you.
Do you think you can grow to like someone?
I think you can, obviously, because you don't know the person when you first see them. But in terms of attractiveness,
Well, I just mean like a lot of people go like, they might start something like casual, be like, oh, I just want this to be like fairly chill. And then they'll go, feelings might grow over time. I mean, the reason I ask this question is because I think a lot of the time when people go, oh, it's really casual, it's actually just like they want something like dead chill and they're not genuinely actually interested.
they've got
But
commitment
then,
issues.
yeah, like commitment issues. But then at the same time, you watch something like Married at First Sight Australia, where they literally are put in a room with someone. And initially there are some people which attractions at first are like, yeah, really not interested. But by the end of it, they're like, you can see that they're really happy. That's happened on a couple of occasions. I wouldn't say that happens all the time, but I think a lot of people live off that like hope that it will like one day grow into something else if it's not quite what they want it to be right now.
I think it's definitely possible, because when you look at friendships as well, I feel like there's so many really strong friendships that also start out from you hating each other.
Yeah.
And then you become best mates. I think you can grow to love anybody. Yeah, I would say so.
I do think sometimes that gives people false hope though.
I agree.
Situations.
I
You know, 'cause
agree.
they're like, oh, might grow. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the maybe kind of thing. And I think also, like, if one person is like so ready for a relationship and that's what they want, and the other person is like, oh, like, I'm not really in that space yet, I kind of just want to see how things go, that Old Testament, like, go with the flow kind of thing, then you're not right for each other at that point in time, because you're both in different places. One of you's very sure you want a relationship and the other doesn't. Do you know what I mean? And then the person that wants a relationship is more time going to catch feelings very, like, way quicker than the other person is.
If you want to know what we're drinking here in the Talk 20 studio, then let me tell you, because you're going to want to try it. Riviera Iced Tea is the newest sponsor of the Talk 20s podcast. It's low calorie, natural, vegan, and gluten-free. I'm absolutely obsessed with iced tea. I've just been laughing here about how obsessed I am with iced tea with our producer. It's my favorite drink in the whole wide world, no exaggeration. And the peach iced tea from Riviera is genuinely the best I've ever tasted. So if you want to fill your fridge with something super refreshing, head to rivieraicedtea.com or check out their Instagram at Riviera Iced Tea. I always ask people their biggest adulting failure. Is there something that springs to mind that you haven't like already shared? Whereas like something that's happened to you where you're like, I cannot believe I did that. That is a big adulting fail.
I wanted to say no, I'm perfect, but no. Recently, I almost did murder my boyfriend and go down for manslaughter. No, I'm just kidding.
I was like, joking, Chloe, what?
No, I did though. We went on a trip to LA, and obviously I could drive before because I used to live in California, and I passed over there, so I know the roads, I know the rules. But that was 6 years ago, and since coming back to the UK, I've always lived in a city, so I haven't needed to get my license. But I did. I passed first time getting my license in the UK 2 weeks before we went to LA. Now, bear in mind, when I have had my driving test over here, and the car I drove before in the US was a Prius, and I think it was like a Toyota or like a Corsa kind of thing. That
They're
I
usually
had.
automatic in the States as well, right?
Yeah, and it was automatic in the UK as well. But both have been small cars that I'm used to driving, right? So we go to LA, and I'm like, sick, I'm 25, I can hire a car, let's get a Jeep.
Yeah.
When I tell you my feet did not touch the floor in the car, I couldn't even rest my foot. I was like doing, you can't see right now, but I was having to try and balance my pressure with my top foot on the
Because you couldn't lower the seat down.
Yeah,
It was
even
too
at
high.
it was crazy. And the wind mirror, is it called a wind mirror? Yeah, it is. The side mirrors, they barely turn, so you've not got a great view around this massive vehicle. And by the way, like, if you've never been to America, the vehicles over there are like on steroids.
Yeah, they're massive.
Huge.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm driving an army tanker for the first time in 6 years. And I get there.
Yeah.
It's like a Thursday night. It's the busiest night in LA because it's the time everyone goes out. It's dark. It's raining. Like, odds were against me. We're going down this road. I look out of the mirror because I'm turning right onto a side road. Everything's clear. Everything's fine. Go to turn. Tesla bombs it down the road. And I was this close to going into the side of a Tesla. And we had to pull over. And my boyfriend was like, Chloe, do you need me to drive? I was like, you can't drive. You're not insured on the car.
Oh, no.
So you had to drive to the hotel. We got there in one piece. Obviously, I'm here to tell the story.
Yeah.
And we thought that was it. And I was like, listen, it's just the weather. It's fine. It's just the circumstance. It's just the first time that I've driven the car. I'm sure I'll be fine tomorrow. So, yeah, we took the Jeep back, but it was really embarrassing. And he won't let me live it down.
Yeah. Did you have to get like a smaller car and like...
Yeah, we got an Audi.
Yeah.
I was like, this is more my kind of vibe.
The first time I drove my fiance's car, I drove it off our drive into the pillar that is on the end of our drive. So this is our drive for people watching on YouTube. For Spotify, I'll try and explain as best I can. But say this is our drive. We have a pillar, a post here, and a post here. That post is now gone because we've had to like change our drive so it's more open. So because of this, I drove the car out. And because I'd never driven it before, I completely misjudged the angles. And I turned the wheel far too much, far too soon. And I took this whole pillar with me. Yeah. Off the drive the first time I'd ever driven it. Worst of all, he was watching from the window because it was the first time I'd driven the car, and he was just like, oh, I just want to check if she's okay. And he watched me do it in slow motion. I was only going to Asda. Off the drive like that in lockdown. I got out of the car and I was sobbing. I was like, I can't do this. I actually can't. And the whole car was like smushed in. So bad that the car got stuck. Like it was, and Dan couldn't, it was like stuck against this pillar, and he got in and he was trying to do it, which was just making scratches back and forth on the side of the thing. We had to ring his dad in lockdown times when you weren't allowed to see another person. But like this car was so embarrassing. It was so embarrassing.
Listen, desperate
times,
times,
you have to come
desperate
up.
measures.
And he came and he eventually managed to like get it back round and like onto the drive. And then I looked at this car and I was like, I can never drive ever again, ever again. And it put me off. It put me off driving for a long time, but now it's fine. And the car did get fixed. It wasn't like right off or anything, but I just think,
thank God.
Yeah, driving is like one of the biggest things that as an adult, I think is so dangerous. I feel like how they let 16-year-olds drive in America, I do not.
It's 15. I think it's
15. How they let 15-year-olds drive is crazy.
Tell me about it. You can drive at 15. You can't get alcohol till you're 21, and you can buy a gun at 18.
Yeah. Okay,
well, that's just...
We love talking on this podcast about how nobody's perfect in your 20s, in your 30s, in your 40s, in your 50s, no matter what age. Nobody's perfect. Everybody's working through something. What is it that you're working on at this moment in time that you want to get better at in your life?
I was going to say to have a fat ass, but always. I think everybody is a perfectionist when they look at themselves, because you see yourself in the mirror every single day. Mm-hmm. And like, there's little things about me that I think other people would be like, what? That's an insecurity of yours? Like, the fact that my jaw's uneven is something that really frustrates me, and I really don't like the left side of my face, but no one would ever know that.
No.
Do you know what I mean? So those are things that make me think, oh, maybe I get like some chin or like jaw
Chloe,
filler.
you do not need any of this. You are so
and it's
good.
just,
And I say this to everyone that sits down and says all these things, and people will tell it to you all the time, and it's always what your mum says to you. You're like, shut up, mum. Like, I'm not.
Yeah.
But you don't really want to hear it, but it's so true. Like, you genuinely don't need
but then I
anything.
think about like what I would tell my best friend as well, and
Yeah.
what I would tell other people in like advice videos, and I'm like, love yourself like the way you are. And I know that's probably the cringiest thing ever.
Oh, he's like, yes, love yourself the way you are.
But yeah, like,
Yeah.
I saw a video the other day and it really aggravated me. And it was a guy trying to promote a product that gets rid of stretch marks and cellulite like it's a bad thing. And I'm like, it's a natural thing. Mm-hmm. How are you trying to make women have another thing to be insecure about? It's just really aggravates me. And then here's me on the other hand, like,
well, I did say to you, what's the one thing that you're working on that you want to get better at? And your answer was like skincare and maybe this, but then I guess you've kind of talked yourself out of it and gone, no, actually, it's probably more about loving the person that I actually am.
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I think that's the cheaper option and the better one, the most longer lasting, because otherwise you'll just be doing this forever.
Yeah.
We always have the same question that we end all of our podcasts with, and it's if you could look back at 20-year-old Chloe and give her just one piece of advice that would see her through her 20s, what would you want to say to her and why?
Know when to leave. I think that's so important with any kind of a relationship, even friendships, or the job that you've got. Obviously, I've just talked to you about some of the horrible experiences I've had, but there was points where there was like red flags to me, or points where I should have left and I didn't, and I stayed longer. But I think knowing the time when you should leave is so important. I don't feel like scared to either, I think is huge. Also, you don't need a man to be happy. I wish my younger self knew that, because I went through a period of time, obviously, I think it was probably a trauma response, where I felt like I needed to be speaking to a man, being in a relationship to be happy. And it's the furthest thing from the truth. I think romanticize your friendships, romanticize your relationship with your family, and go and just fucking have fun. And don't care about whether the person that you're speaking to is going to be your future husband and father of your kids. Like, it's so easy to get caught up in all of that and completely forget that you've got a life outside of that. And lastly, just get a fucking therapist.
Thank you so much, Chloe. It's been amazing to have you on the podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do leave your comments down below on YouTube. And we will see you again next week for another episode of the Talk 20s podcast.